This is going to be episode 1 of our long-term GR Corolla ownership series. The point of these videos is to walk you through what this car is like to live with, modify, and of course demonstrate our ever-changing opinions as we live with this car for many thousands of miles. Why the GR Corolla over something like the Elantra N, Golf R, Civic Type R, or Integra Type S? Well, to be honest, it's because we felt this car had the most room for improvement, at least in the mechanical department. We wanted to see if the aftermarket could solve some of the mechanical deficiencies of the GR Corolla, while not sacrificing its day-to-day livability. If you watched our long-term GR86 series, this is going to follow that similar philosophy. And of course, we're going to walk you through all the things that go wrong with this car and many of the costs associated with it. So what about the car itself? Well, it was purchased at Toyota of St. Charles. Our salespeople, Emma and Rob, are the same people we worked with on our GR86 series. They are a MSRP only dealer. The one thing to note is they are a dealer that prioritizes their local community. So for rarer Toyotas, things like the hybrid models, basically cars with long waiting lists, they only sell them to people in their community, which I totally understand. So if you are someone like us who lives in their region, go hit them up if you're looking for a Toyota. Of course, accept the market we live in and you're probably gonna have to wait. The car is a Circuit Edition 2023 GR Corolla. Why did we go with a Circuit Edition? Well, it's mechanically identical to a fully optioned out core with some cosmetic nice bits. The reason why we did not pick the Morizo is it's largely an irrelevant car that no one can buy. The Circuit, the only difference from the core really is a leather interior, a wing that comes as standard, and of course the carbon roof with some other cosmetic nice bits. The car is a gray car, day one. However, once the car was PDI'd by our lovely tech, Nick, we sent it right to Chicago Auto Pros where it got wrapped. The reason behind that is, again, the color options for this car are abysmal. So with that in mind, let's head to Chicago Auto Pros and have Jason walk you through the pros and cons and some of the fine print associated with vinyl wrapping cars. We're back at Chicago Auto Pros in Lombard, Illinois. This is our home away from home, and if you've watched any of our other many detailing focused videos or detailing focused segments of videos, you recognize this gentleman, but please introduce yourself.
My name is Jason. I'm co-owner of Chicago Auto Pros.
So Jason, just like our GR86 long-term series, we bought a GR Corolla like we've already talked about, and we're doing another series with you guys. However, this time we've done something different. In the last videos, we've done PPF. This is something I've never done to one of my own cars. What is this?
This is a color change wrap. So it's a vinyl material, like a big sticker that we wrap over your vehicle and it changes the color.
Why would you do this to your own car?
Well, in customization and being different, standing out from the crowd, that is one reason. You know, if you have a car where you want a particular color, you want it satin, you want it purple, you want it pink, you want a color shift, you're able to do that with this material.
And this is way less money than actually just repainting your car.
It is, and it's temporary, so if you get sick of it, you can take it off and you can put a different color on if you want to.
In this car's case, when I bought my GR Corolla, there were like 4 color options. I always wanted a green car. This was my opportunity to do it. There is some caveats associated with vinyl wrap versus PPF.
Yes.
PPF exists as a sacrificial layer to protect your paint. You can do that with vinyl, but there are different kinds of vinyl, correct?
Right, yeah. So I mean, if you're comparing it to paint protection film, which is an 8 to 10 mil thick film, polyurethane, which absorbs impacts. This is a different type of material. It's much thinner. Usually it's about 4 mil. Now you are going to get some protection from the actual paint underneath because you have a physical film layer there. But as far as rock chips and stuff, there's not much material there to absorb the impact of that rock. It will penetrate that film and could possibly damage the paint underneath still.
But you can get vinyl that also acts as PPF.
So there are new films coming out of the market that have the thickness and the color change abilities of the vinyl wrap, but still have all the same benefits of paint protection film. So they do come with the self-healing factor, they come with the rock chip protection, and the scratch resistance on them too.
But as is, you are protecting your paint from swirls and any of the stuff that I probably will do to this car because I am terrible with my own paint.
Yeah, I mean, any wash-induced type of marring or swirls, yeah, you're protecting it from this. But you still have to remove this. So when you remove it, you're still going to have to remove a little bit of adhesive, and you may be putting in swirls and marring when you're actually removing the film. So
pros and cons of vinyl wrapping
absolutely.
specifically.
There is a worry with any aftermarket painted parts of the vehicle. So most of the OEM paint, we have no worries of removing vinyl from them pieces. It's very safe to do, and there are manufacturers that actually have a warranty against that. If you remove the film in a certain amount of time and it's OEM paint and something happens to it, they will pay for it to get repainted. But if it's something is repainted from a body shop because of damage, there could be issues if it wasn't prepped properly for that paint to actually peel off. So those are some of the things that can happen, and sometimes we don't know if a panel has been repainted or not, because we've had new cars in here, brand new cars, that have been repainted panels.
So my last question for you, and this is going to be a very long video for everyone who wants to learn everything about a GR Corolla, but how do you protect the vinyl film itself? We put a ceramic coating on this, and that ceramic coating is different than a ceramic coating you put on a regular.
Yeah, the coating that we put on this is specific for film. It's made to last longer, and what this does is keeps it cleaner for longer, so it keeps you washing it less, which hopefully will reduce the amount of swirling and haziness that comes from doing actual washes. So it keeps it hydrophobic, a small layer of protection there, but it's mainly for maintenance, to keep it cleaner, make it easier for you to, when you go to wash your vehicle and everything, and then extend the life of it too, because this is basically a plastic, you know, which when it's out in the UV, when it's out in the sun, it's baking, it's gonna harden, it's gonna, you know, start to fade. So the coating we put on it will add to the UV protection and hopefully extend the life of this film.
Perfect. Well, again, if you want to learn everything there is to learn about vinyl wrapping, we'll be doing a fine print video, but if you're in the Chicagoland area, per usual, please check out Chicago Auto Pros. Thank you, sir.
Later.
And we're back. Now it's time to talk about what we've done to this car, both from an aftermarket perspective and from a service side of things. Well, first off, we did its break-in oil change around 1,000 miles. This car now has about 4,000 on it. Currently, we got rid of the Eco very thin oil in this car when we went to a 5W30 full synthetic. The reason we went up in weight is to potentially give us a little bit more thermal overhead. We also did brake fluid, as we are going to be tracking this car quite a bit. Now, from an aftermarket perspective, we wanted to focus on the things that you or I could do in our garage fairly easy, and focus on things with a fairly low buy-in cost, as that's where we feel most people are going to at least start with this car. So we did brake pads, camber bolts, and wheels and tires. Why camber bolts? Well, this car has no alignment capability from the factory day one. We wanted to help give this car a little bit more mechanical grip in the front end of this vehicle, improve turn-in, and potentially save the tires, at least their shoulders. When it comes to brake pads, we worked with our friends at Counterspace Garage. We've used their pads on our cars for years. They know what they're talking about. They have a race series. And if you work with them directly, they can help figure out what pad that they have works best with your application. There is not a perfect pad. This car is running their CP pads, which is their street track approach. They don't have the highest thermal overhead, but for the stuff we're doing with our car on our track, they seem to work quite well. Wheels and tires. Well, this car from the factory comes in 18s. They're relatively narrow, and they're running a 235 Pilot 4. It is not all that sticky of a tire. It's balancing mileage with some level of track capability and grip. We went away from that, and we went with Apex wheels. They're an 18x10. They are an SM10 RS. Here's a link to them. They are bronze, which of course everyone seems to like. The main purpose of these wheels is they are forged, which means they are ultra light and ultra strong. We've used Apex wheels on all of our personal cars for years. I've had them on many of my other personal vehicles. I know some of the other people in this space like them as well, and there are a couple of reasons for that. A, they actually focus on engineering. Unlike many of their competitors, they actually VIA and JWL certified their wheels. They are a wheel company that realizes wheels are consumable items, so they don't cost $1 billion, And of course, they actually give you a discount on your next set of wheels when you damage these. The reality is, if you're riding curbs, you're on track, sooner or later, you're gonna run into a wheel failure, and they don't bend you over on their next set. When it comes to tires, once again, we're working with our friends from Bridgestone. We picked the Potenza Race. It falls in between their Potenza Sport, which is their Pilot 4S competitor, and the tire we tracked this car originally on in our comparison test, and the RE71 RS. The reason the Potenza Race exists is it's more of their endurance tire. It has much longer longevity while only giving a little bit on the grip levels of the RE71 RS. It's also less likely to overwhelm the stock, relatively soft suspension on this car. The wheel and tire combo, despite being much wider and running a much wider tire, going from a 235 to a 265, is still lighter than the factory wheel and tire options. While there are other tires and wheels available for this car, that is the single biggest thing you can do to improve the overall performance of your GR Corolla. Now with that out of the way, we will be tracking this later, and we're going to talk about how that went, but it's now time to head to Limit Plus One, a performance shop in Crystal Lake, Illinois, that actually specializes on the GR Corolla, GR86, and GR Supra. They're going to walk you through some of the mechanical pros and deficiencies of this car as it currently sits in the aftermarket. I'm here at Limit Plus One in Crystal Lake, Illinois. These guys are the all things GR shop. They work on GR Supras, GR Corollas, and of course the GR86. I'm with this gentleman, James. Introduce what you guys do currently with these cars.
So here at Limit Plus One, we are developing the aftermarket for the GR Corolla platform, the GR86 platform, the GR Supra platform, kind of all things GR. Really what our goal is to develop what's best for the car. Obviously, we're going to offer everything for them, but we want to develop a package that best improves not only the downfalls, but makes use of the benefits of the vehicle and make and provide parts that really help grow the car as a whole.
These guys are going to create packages for every solution for this car, from our plan, sort of a daily driver plus mentality, to their shop car, which is a full-blown track car.
Yes, so we always want to suit different needs of different vehicles. So what we'll do is we'll kind of build packages that say, hey, you know, if you want to street drive your car and take it to an autocross event, we'll develop a plan and a package that best suits that. And then not only with that, we can build something that says, you know, if you want to go all out, we can do that too. Because that's what we're developing our car, stress testing it, pushing it to its limits, and that's honestly where the name comes from, Limit Plus One. We're going to push it beyond the limits and see what really we can do with the vehicles as a whole, and then dial it back for whatever you might need for it.
You can break all the shit so the customers don't have to deal with that later.
We're breaking everything as quickly as possible so that you guys don't have to.
So we've already done brake pads, camber bolts, wheels and tires, like we've already talked about. And I'm here to talk to James about what's currently found with these cars as far as deficiencies go. Let's talk about cooling. That's the big one.
Yeah, the biggest downfall of these cars is honestly temperature. They hold together well, but heat is their enemy through and through. There's really a couple main points that we can go over on that. If you want to start, we can go for it. So, like I said, heat's the enemy. In the back half of the car where we're standing is actually the wet clutch pack. So what that does is it uses a clutch pack with the variable difference in gearing ratios from the front to the rear of the vehicle, and what it does is it can disengage and engage the clutch to do kind of a variable all-wheel drive. And with that, you know, you have your GR4 track button in the middle, and what it does is it either loads or unloads the clutch packs to change the amount of power going in the front and rear. Within 12-15 minutes, we've kind of found of, you know, solid track driving, you're going to find that it goes into front-wheel drive mode. Basically, at the end of the day, what happens is the clutch pack just gets too hot where it can't effectively and intelligently use the all-wheel drive system. So it just says, I'm done, and shuts it off.
Does that get worse the more speed and mechanical grip you put in these cars, or is it pretty consistent?
It's a pretty consistent deal. We've done Autobahn, Road America, we've done Gingerman, and usually like that 12 to 15 minute mark. So like within just a normal HPD session, it's going to overheat if you're driving the car hard.
Are there currently any cooling solutions for that rear clutch pack?
There's not any solutions. It's something we're working on over this winter. The reason for that is it's actually a sealed unit. There's nothing you can do as far as plumbing in a cooler or anything like that. So what we're going to have to do is actually make a billet unit that then the clutch housings go into. We're working on a way that we can do it. We're machining some plugs into it where we can get AN lines in the stock housing, but space is kind of the difficulty there. It's a very tight unit. There's not a lot of space on the inside of the housing to the clutch packs. So obviously aeration is going to be a concern. The fluid type's a concern because there's no information on what's in there whatsoever. It's a tricky one, but it's something that needs to happen to make the car's track reliable.
So it's not the torsion front or rear that's overheating, it's the actual clutch itself.
It is not the differentials. The differentials don't have a heat problem, mainly because they don't track heat in the differentials themselves. They're only tracking the temperature of the actual clutch housing itself, which bolts to the front of the rear differential. So it says that it's a all-wheel drive system failure, or overheating is what it says, and it basically just reverts to front-wheel drive mode, fully disengages the rear clutches to let them cool off. And what we found is even if you continue driving on track, it really won't turn itself back on because it's still maintaining enough temperature from the differentials and the gears and just
it's like a thermal runaway problem.
Yeah, it's just no matter what, it's not, if you're still on track, it's not going to cool down by the time you're done with your session.
Well, that's a good explanation and something we've run into in some of the tests we've done in the comparison tests. The next cooling problem I want to address is engine oil.
Yes, so about the same time, usually engine oil is a little bit longer, like 15 to 18 minutes. I mean, it's still within an HPD session, honestly, if you're driving the car hard. We've seen 290 around Road America.
That is a large number.
Yeah, 290 around Road America, and we had to do about a lap and a half of light driving to be able to get it to come back down. It gets to the point where it heat soaks bad enough that it doesn't want to cool itself off. Like you can't do like 2-3 corners, like all right, let's calm down and get going. It doesn't work like that at the point in time.
But there are aftermarket solutions currently available.
Yes, so we are in development and finalization of an external oil cooler system for the car. From our track testing, we've seen that it can reduce temperatures significantly to the point that it's you're in the 230s to 240s range, which is respectable. I mean, it's still a small engine. That's the thing. They don't have the capacity of like, a
V8 or
you don't see, like, you're not going to get to the point where you could have 7, 8, 9 quarts of oil in the car. You'd have to have a massive cooler. It'd be like another intercooler in the front of your car. But that's really a lot of the problem of it is the oil capacity. It just heats too quickly.
So those are the two big limitations currently for this vehicle.
Yes. As far as temperature goes, I mean, another one that isn't a limitation, it's not life-threatening to the car, is intake air temperatures. So we see a lot of problems with them on track as well due to the actual airbox, and we can go over that later. The way that the airbox is designed is there's actually an inlet valve that's vacuum actuated on the bottom portion of the airbox. And what that does is at higher RPM, it basically opens up to allow more flow to the turbo, because if not, there's just not enough air intake coming into the airbox. The problem with that is that it opens directly behind the radiator. So you just suck hot air in. So with that rise in intake air temperature, the vehicle is going to naturally decrease timing due to knock because you can't get the same fuel loading in there. You're going to begin to get detonation, and at that point, it needs to pull timing. And you'll notice a power drop within a couple laps on track.
How substantial is it? Do you think it's like 30, 40 horsepower?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty, for the total amount of horsepower, I mean, it's probably a 7% loss in horsepower at least. And it will just continue to rise as intake air temperature comes up, so.
Moving to a different airbox, has that solved that problem largely?
So it basically resolved the issue more or less with the, we run the E-Venturi airbox on our car. It has an external scoop that actually guides air from the front radiator opening and then feeds that into the airbox, and that's constant flow of fresh, cold air. And that has really, really mitigated the problem.
So let's talk about the other elephant in the room, and that is the state of the aftermarket, the suspension options, some of the deficiencies with this car. So you can tune these cars. I know you are. Graham's doing all your tuning.
Yep.
How easy is it, and what kind of gains are people expecting?
So we, right now, are tuning the car in EcuTech. It's still technically kind of in their early phases of tuning, so we can't have true OBD tuning at this point. We can't just send you a file and you use their dongle to tune it. We actually have to go direct to the ECU. So we actually have to unplug the ECU, go directly to it. It's not that it's a big deal, but it's not something that, a lot of people are wanting to do themselves. So most of the time, as of right now, we're having ECU sent to us, and then we'll do the tuning from there. Either that or you can come and do it in-house.
On your dyno?
Yep, on our in-house dyno. So we're seeing, we've started doing some E40 blends and stuff like that with the car, and they respond really well to them. That helps the intake air temperatures as well. We've seen 20, 30 horsepower gains with pump fuel.
And that's drivable horsepower. It's not all just peak numbers.
No, it's not peak number. It's not actually a ton of peak numbers. You really gain the most in the mid-range of the power. And a lot of that too is just being able to vary the boost. Now, the only problem with the top end that we've already found is actually these cars, the way that their valve springs are set up with stock turbo, not going crazy on them, we're starting to see some valve float in the top end once we start really cranking up the boost numbers, especially on the E40. So that's really the limiting factor right now is the valve springs.
So moving from there, suspension's the big one. Obviously, that's what I'm going to primarily focus on in this car. what is available, what can we do with these cars? Obviously, there's limited alignment capability out of the factory.
Yes, so in the rear of the vehicle right now, as it sits from the factory, there's actually no true, it's kind of how you want to take it, right? There's no true camber adjustment or there's no true toe adjustment. There's actually only one eccentric in the rear on the spring bucket arms. The main concern for tire wear in a street driving scenario is going to be your toe, right? That has much more of a degradation factor to your tires than camber will. So what we've found is kind of the best option is we need to set toe correctly, not only for turn and feel, rear end stability, stuff like that, but also for tire wear. So we'll set the toe and then your camber kind of is what it is.
You can do camber bolts though in the front, which we have done,
Yep.
or you can do top hats.
You can do top hats with a coilover system in the front. At this point, nobody's developed a true camber plate for the stock shocks, but we use Fortune Autos at this time, and we're working with MCS as well to develop a true coilover system that's both street and trackable.
And unlike something like a GR86, you basically have to tear apart the top cowl to do a coilover.
So you have to rip apart the whole top cowl, basically.
Cool.
You have to take everything out from behind the engine to be able to get to the strut mounts, and on top of that, they have like a brace sheet metal piece that goes all the way across, and you actually have to cut that out to even be able to get to the camber plates if you were to install them. So it's not like, you can just throw some camber plates or coilovers on there with most cars and go to adjusting. It's pretty in-depth.
Well, the reality of this car, Mark and I talk about it all the time, is they've basically taken a Corolla, an economy car, and have turned it into sort of a Civic Type R, like a track day faux rally car, and there are just limitations to this platform, and that's what you're running into. But they're not something you cannot address. You can fix some of these problems.
Yes, we do development. I mean, it's constant. We're working with 100 different companies. We're doing our own development to come up with the right solutions to all these problems that are inherent from trying to take a Corolla and make it into a trackable vehicle. At the end of the day, I mean, it's as simple as that. I mean, it's not truly designed from the ground up to do what we want to do with it.
Are you running into any problems with brake capacity or actual suspension parts failing on this car?
As far as suspension parts failing, we haven't seen a true failure. The only thing that we have seen is, for some unbeknownst reason, from the factory, the rear lateral arm, actually the nut on it will fall off and end up in your under trays.
Cool.
With retorquing, we've tried different hardware, just like a standard JAS hardware. It's not a hardware issue. I believe it's just a torque and vibration issue in the rear of the car. We haven't seen it since we've retorqued them ourselves. But I mean, at the end of the day, if you are tracking the vehicle, it's something that you should meet the standards of driving a car and track and nut and bolt your car often.
What about brakes? I know the thermal capacity, talking to the guys at Counter Space Garage, the actual system is pretty robust.
Yes.
You're more likely to overheat your car than you are to kill the brakes?
Yes, so we haven't seen massive problem. I mean, with a stock pad, you're obviously going to get some fade by the end of a session around a road course. But as far as generalized overheating, I mean, the stock fluid does decently well. We have upgraded to the endless RF650 fluid just for the peace of mind and knowing that we're not going to have issues with it. But just with regular bleeding, if you're doing consistent track days, I mean, we haven't seen any issues with the brakes.
Okay, before we go take this for a drive, we did take this to the track with Britt Casey, and naturally, this being wet and October in the Chicagoland area, it rained both times we went. The one thing to note is Britt did drive this car, and while the lap time is totally useless, and Britt Casey Jr. will be the person setting all the lap times in this car to keep the driver consistent as a variable through the series, he did run into some interesting issues. First off, just as I experienced when this car was bone stock, both in this vehicle and in the press car, it overheated its diff after like 3 laps in Autobahn South. A little bit disappointing. It continues to be an issue. Hopefully we can figure out a way to fix that. The other thing is it called Toyota emergency services multiple times on Britt while he was driving this thing around. Essentially, if you yaw this car out or you give it enough G's, it thinks it's an accident and will call emergency services. I've not figured out a way to turn that off. It is annoying, and it is funny, and it is something to talk about.
Impact detected. Connecting to the emergency call center.
Safety Connect Response Center received an emergency notification from your vehicle. Do you need police, fire, ambulance?
No, the car's fine, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so just to confirm, you said there's no emergency?
Yep.
Yep. And can I ask what might have triggered it? The SOS? collision notification?
It's just G-Force driving in the rain.
Alright. I'll go ahead and disconnect the call then. If you have any further questions or you do need any assistance, just hit the SOS button on the vehicle. We're always here to help.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
It called Toyota.
What?
It called Toyota because I had I don't know, sliding in a corner and it thought I crashed.
Impact detected. Connecting to the emergency call center. Emergency response center.
Safety Connect Response Center. We've received an emergency notification from your vehicle. Do you need police, fire, or medical assistance?
No, it's a false alarm. It happened twice now. I'm on a track right now. So.
Oh, okay. Would you like me to disable that?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Let me have you just verify one item or two just to make sure. Okay.
With that out of the way, it's time for Mark and I to go take this for a drive where we're going to discuss how we feel about this car as it sits now with its basic modifications and what we hopefully want to do with the car in the future.
Tell me about your 3-cylinder, Jack.
Oh, Mark, you're going to feel what the Takumi's made in the same factory that they made your LC 500. That's some 3-cylinder power.
Yeah, she's a lot quicker in the cold. Way quicker than... I mean, it must have picked up like 20 horsepower since the last time I was in this. Have you tuned it?
I have not tuned it yet. I've not had my stage 15 tunes.
Oh, okay.
Now we've spent some time in this car together. I've road tripped in it. I've put almost 4,000 miles on it. We've tracked this both at the launch event, in our shitbox shootout, and of course I've done some tracking in it recently in this exact car. And we've experienced this now in everything other than winter, which we're about to go into. How do you feel about this car now?
So I'm going to choose my words carefully here because I'm not the biggest fan of this car. Some of it has to do with just its overall interior ergonomics and the fact that it feels too safe to drive it fast. Like, it's not edgy enough. However, I have to keep in mind that this price, this is one of the most affordable, fun cars you can possibly buy with Toyota reliability mostly. It's all-wheel drive. It's an all-season car. And it is really, really enjoyable to drive when you're wheeling it around fast. And the all-wheel drive system, to be fair to it, is super capable in the wet, broken pavement. It's going to be amazing in the snow, which I know you've already had some experiments with that or experience with it. So I think, you know, I'm looking forward to seeing how you're going to enjoy it over the winter in its intended use case.
Yeah, when you put this thing on some Blizzaks and it's snowing out, I imagine this will be a good time on roads like this. So driving this 10/10 on the track is not a particularly enjoyable experience, to be honest. Yes, you're on track, but if you're comparing it against things like the Elantra N, the Civic Type R, the Integra Type S, not so much the Golf R, but it is the least enjoyable to drive out of that bunch. And we walked through why in our video, in our comparison tests. And honestly, even with the tires and the camber bolts, while it's made it a little bit quicker around the track, and it has, going to a 200 tread wear Potenza race over the Pilot 4 is the easiest way to shave 1 to like 2.5 seconds off your lap time.
Yeah.
The core dynamics of this car, the fact that it is too stiff, I guess, vertically up and down motions, its ability to deal with compression and rebound, it's too stiff, but laterally, its side-to-side movements are awful.
Yeah.
You get this medicine ball feel while you're on track, but on the road, like we are right now, the fact that you don't have to get tires to get up to temp like in your Civic Type R, and the fact that there's minimal understeer on the front end, it's just a general washing effect in the rear drive, the all-wheel drive gets you out of the corners. It's a pretty enjoyable, actually very enjoyable car to drive in a back road. You can go flying in this thing. I think that's where I've appreciated this car more than I thought I would.
Yeah, so I think that's the biggest thing is like the comparison between the Integra Type S and the Type R, right? Like, I like the Type R more, to be fair. I think the interior is better. I think it's a better, more dialed in car, more focused car. However, to your point, when you get out here in the cold, unless you're running some like really good all season or winter tire, all you do is understeer. It wants to rip the front tires off the car, and you don't have that with this. And this becomes a more real car, a more fun to drive car year round when you really, really want to rip on it. And I think it rides good for a fun car like this on the street. Yes.
Compared to the Type R specifically and the Elantra N.
Yeah, it is a better riding car, and you gotta, I understand, like, I'm not trying to be hard on it, it's still a Corolla, so you're still stuck with those roots of it being a really affordable car. So yeah, it's not gonna be the most refined car, it's pretty buzzy, it's pretty noisy, but that's what's missing on a lot of cars. They're so overly refined that they refine all this out and you don't have any connection to it. I still feel like through the inputs, you are connected to this car. And that's why I think it's such a good value for where it's at. It feels like a 2-generational, like, fun hot hatch. It really does serve its purpose with that.
This feels more like a contemporary to something like a Focus RS or an older STI to the new FL5. Like, the FL5 rides better than this, has a vastly better interior, it's a more usable car space-wise. The joy of the Corolla is that it's a smaller car. It really does feel fairly small. The con, though, Mark, is definitely some of the interior refinement. This car doesn't come with an armrest, so I had to add one, which is unbelievable, particularly for a car that's $42,000.
Ever since my girlfriend left me, things have never been the same. I sold everything, all my cars, small appliances and clothes. I found a new passion in Tuxmats for everything from bedding to wardrobe. But Jack won't stop riding my jock over these videos.
I want the Corolla video done. You are costing me money and time. You don't do what you say you will do because you are sick. You buy floor mats for cars you don't own. Where did all the money go?
Jack is a guy who does not respect a perfectly clean Tuxmat. I hear his New Balance shoes grinding in the filth in my nightmares. After hours of cleaning and detailing them, I had to do things different.
Ever since you have been shooting your mouth off about piano black and my dad's factory orders are down, did you see the latest sample I sent? It's the cheapest version yet, maximum profits. Push the piano black in the videos and stop with the floor mats. Got it? Addressing any of the reliability concerns that pop up with this car, make this a better or hopefully not worse experience. I mean, there are some like subtle weird things, like today getting into this car, it smells like gear fluid.
It smells like gear oil, that's for sure. I mean, I smelled it in my garage when you pulled it in there. I thought that was my car, my BMW leaking, because that's what I expected, but Yeah, I'd be curious to see, throwing this up on the lift, if there's anything wet underneath the undercarriage, Jack.
Well, I wouldn't be too surprised, as you've really spiced this car out, Mark.
Yeah, there's a lot of spice in here.
All right, with that, let's wrap up this very, very long video, sir. Good enough?
Yes, sir.
Whoa!